serious, what's something that mentally and/or emotionally broke you? My fiancé died the day after we got engaged. This happened to someone I knew. A good friend of mine died in a car accident the day after her boyfriend proposed. It was brutal for all of us, but especially him. She died 25 years ago and I still think about her from time to time. On the note of time passing but still thinking about the person, it's been 36 years since my aunt died, 3 months after giving birth, from undiagnosed cancer. Symptoms were attributed to pregnancy. Turned out she had advanced breast cancer that metastasized. I never got a chance to know her, but my mom and the rest of the family would talk about her very often. She was the youngest sister of 5. They all grew up poor and in a very abusive home. My grandma ran away with them and became single mother of 5. My aunt was only 30 years old when she died, and I can say no one in the family was ever the same. Her death didn't affect me in that way since I wasn't even born yet, but what did affect me was seeing my family keep her spirit alive by talking about her, sharing anecdotes and so on, even decades after. She was an artist and a gentle soul that showed nothing but love and care to everyone around her, and my family taught me that being that kind of a person leaves an impact on others that lasts decades. I just lost my stepmom, in part due to cancer, after misdiagnosis. She started having serious GI symptoms in October, after traveling to California. They said she had a parasite. They determined that wasn't it, because no one else that traveled with her had it, and decided it was diverticulitis. This was in November. They wanted to do surgery, but she caught a lung infection. She was in the hospital, and they were waiting for her to recover to do surgery. They did her surgery between Christmas and New Year's Eve. When they opened her up, they found it was another misdiagnosis. She was riddled with cancer. They told us 6 months without chemo, maybe 2 years with. She had to recover from surgery before she could start chemo. She didn't make it that long. She developed pneumonia and couldn't fight it because of the cancer. She spent 2 weeks in ICU before succumbing to the fluid in her lungs. She passed away mid-February. I know it's recent, so of course I'm still thinking of her, but I imagine I will for a long time. I can't help but to wonder if she'd still be here if she had been correctly diagnosed in the first place. Her youngest grandson is due next month, and the next youngest was born the day she entered ICU. She never got to meet them. That really hurts. I lost all of my grandparents by the time I was 15-ish. I was a stupid teenager and didn't use the time I have had left with them in a way I should have. But I love it when my parents share tidbits about them. Filing my dad's bankruptcy, getting him diagnosed for early-onset Alzheimer's, dementia, and being his primary caregiver. It completely reverses the father-son role in a way I was not prepared for. Better now, but still is heartbreaking. I will always have PTSD from watching my mother die. Having a mother with schizophrenia. Such a tough illness for someone to experience, and tough on a family. When the police told me my fiancé had been killed by a drunk driver immediately outside of our neighborhood, it didn't help that the police lost the driver in the hospital, letting him escape for about 30 hours. The driver suffered a chest injury after driving his car 95 miles per hour, in a 40 miles per hour, into hers while he ran a red light. The police didn't feel they should charge him while he was medically incapacitated, and didn't have anybody guarding him. They said it was impossible due to his injuries for him to leave, but, lo and behold, he dragged the chest-draining machine outside and walked up the street before passing out in a wash behind the hospital, causing a huge search effort. It was the week of Christmas, and basically they didn't want to pay anybody the overtime to guard the suspect, is what many have ended up believing. Finding my twin brother dead. My little cousin, 19, hung himself in October. That feeling of holding his cold body as I cut him down from his noose will forever haunt me. I dream of it often. My house caught fire when I was sleeping and I saw my baby's crib go up in flames. He survived, but it f'd me up hard. I dated a girl who was one of those unlucky kids where her house burned down on Christmas Eve. Instead of saving pictures or keepsakes, her father ran back in to save 3 garbage bags full of marijuana and was arrested by the police when the fire truck showed up. He did 10 years in federal prison. She hated Christmas after that and would always speak about her lost baby photos with a lot of sadness. I really felt bad for that girl. Not as dark, but Willie Nelson's house burned down once. Fire crews were there along with a bunch of neighbors, maybe some local media. Willie ran into the smoldering house and emerged a few minutes later with a guitar. People were impressed with his dedication to his art, songcraft. That he'd risk his life to save his beloved guitar. He later confessed that his weed was inside the guitar and he figured he'd probably need it after what had just happened. Finding my mother's remains after she was brutally murdered. Seeing someone whom you had complete faith in, just switch on you and actively try to hurt you. After I found out my ex had been lying, cheating, she acted like she didn't know who I was, avoided all contact, and lied to the other dude about our relationship to make herself seem innocent. The feeling of being able to trust them with anything and just moments later they completely shatter that trust. Betrayal really hurts for a long time, but as time moves forward you realize how much better it is to have weeded that person out of your life, now surrounded by better friends, company, with new knowledge to know what behavior to watch out for in the future. Like most things in life, time makes it a bit easier to come to terms with. I was trafficked. Took me a long time to be back to kind of normal. I did. He knew my mother's address. Different country. He made sure I knew he'd killed others for trying to leave him. He made sure to work me where it's legal because nobody would expect me to be there under duress and I was told to tell everyone I wanted to do it. I got away in 2012. He tried to kill me because I was too old for him, but someone called the police. I never got justice because his lawyer said it's legal, she wanted to do it, she's just bitter that he wanted a younger woman. And everyone believed that. Watching my grandma on my mom's side go through hospice. I have never seen a human slowly deteriorate like that. I was happy to think I would get to spend some time with her and comfort her because the year prior my other grandma died unexpectedly and I never got to say bye. As each day went on, she slowly lost any ability to think or properly communicate to the point that it was like her mind was already gone. When she was close to death, she was making these gargling sounds that sounded like she was drowning. That sound alone is something I will never forget. It was the worst experience of death I have ever experienced. It was literally watching a person you loved just slowly fade away mentally. The amount of weight she lost in just those few days. Just went through a divorce. One day I'm up, the next I'm down. Today I'm pretty down. It's like the person you loved is dead but they're still walking around with someone else inhabiting their body. It's upsetting. I wish I could cut her out of my life but we have to co-parent. My fiancé and I just broke our engagement and now aren't even speaking. The quote getting me through the days is, "Tomorrow may not be better, but at least I will be different." I don't have many emotions these days but I lend strength and compassion to you via internet in the hopes that tomorrow may be different for you. Husband cheated on me while I'm pregnant. Didn't apologize and just blamed me. I am now 5 months pregnant with a toddler. Trying to find a place to live. My 5-year-old got diagnosed with brain cancer. Edited to add he's 14 now and doing well. Moving to a different country and realizing how incompatible I am. Yeah, this. I feel like this isn't talked about enough and people just romanticize it. You mostly spend all your time alone. You don't have friends or family there. Making connections is difficult if you're an introvert, language barrier etc. Cultural difference is no joke. Where I live the people I can talk with don't like to do the activities I like and people I could do activities I like have nothing in common with me to talk about. This. Was kinda afraid to reply about it because many people had stories involving deaths, abuse, or illness. Mine is just moving abroad, which is something people can do very easily, but for me it was the hardest thing I had to go through. Hearing my mom ask if it was going to hurt to die. Few minutes later she took her last breath. Squeezed my hand and a slow release. Am I okay? Nah. A year and a half later I'm still not. No guns, but when I was a tween my best friend's older brother tried to hang himself in the backyard while we were home. We ran next door and got her brother's friend, who came over and cut him down with a knife. He survived, but he was blue in the face and we were hysterical. My biggest middle finger goes to her. I effing hate women who do this. It ruins other people's lives, insults actual victims, and is one reason why men are never believed when they're assaulted. When I was 13 and told my family that I'd been raped by a grown man that had taken me and 2 other underage friends of mine to a motel to roofie us. My grandmother scowled at me with disgust as I sat there with my tail between my legs feeling more shame than I'd ever felt. She told me I needed to learn how to keep my legs closed. I got a huge talking to from the adults and was punished and slut-shamed. I'm 31 now and the thought of this still gives me a pain in my chest. A breakup after a decade-long relationship and losing my job a couple of weeks later. 2020 was definitely tough. But we made it to the other side. Trying to find myself and better myself, it's not been all bad. I've lost about 20 pounds, got a new haircut and better clothes. My apartment is decorated better than our house ever was. I'm just glad we never got married or had kids. Selling a house was hard enough when he was too wrapped up with his new man to bother putting in any of the work. Finding out my wife was cheating and lying about pretty much everything and my dad dying. All in the space of a few months. I'm a shell of a man but keep the good side out and keep going for my kids. The funeral of a murdered friend. Death in the family. Wasn't in the car accident but it really messes with my head to think about how I said for them to have a great day then for them to just be gone no less than 24 hours later. Parasailing accident. Boat pulling us lost all electricity after a larger boat passed and it crashed hard over the wake. I was 800 feet in the air, attached to a steel contraption with my 2 kids on either side of me, with a mass of ropes above us leading to the parachute sail. It created enough drag that the impact wasn't as horrific as it could have been, but plummeting hundreds of feet through the air into the ocean and then realizing the metal contraption is pulling you and your kids under. My son couldn't get on his back so his life vest wasn't working properly. My daughter was screaming because her arm was tangled in the rope. My son was 7, she was 9. Coast Guard was called in for rescue. It was in 2020. I will never be the same person. I have flashbacks every day. Edit to add, my kids survived. Sorry if that was unclear. 10 years ago I was falsely arrested for a DUI. I was acquitted, but I lost everything in the processes. It wasn't just the arrest, it was the whole system and procedures along the way that broke me. I had always defended cops and the judicial system, but you would never know unless you are pulled through it. First, after the arrest, I was fired. I was a bar manager for a huge WA near Yosemite. I guess they thought of me as a liability, but when I asked why I was fired, they said, "We don't have to give you a reason." But I later found out that was the reason. Then I just watched my house, foreclosed, my car, stolen and destroyed, and everything else, storage auction, went away. By the time I was arraigned, it was all gone. I watched how the DA kept extending and prolonging the trial saying he was still investigating while my court-appointed lawyer kept getting me to plea bargain. I had to show court every time so all they were trying to do is get me to not show. Nobody cared if I was innocent, they just want their conviction percent to stay high. Anyway, I was found not guilty in 10 minutes by a jury. It took 5 years of my life and no lawyer would call back when I wanted to sue. Cops are untouchable. I'm a whole different person since this occurred. I hate going anywhere. I don't trust anyone. I hate cops and courts and I don't trust them keeping us safe anymore. It's just a business, that's all. Cops pull in the sales, and courts make sure we pay. When my ex-girlfriend was playing the victim again and decided to hold a giant kitchen knife to her stomach, I have never felt so helpless and abused. When I found my fiancé dead on the ground after I came home from work. I was 22 at the time and it broke me in all the ways. The depth of just how terribly my mother has handled the situation with my oldest brother. At 17, I realized he was grooming me. I told on him and it was swept under the rug. I was made to suffer in silence while he was allowed to be hostile to me as long as it was passively aggressive. I was not allowed to talk about what had happened. Reporting him wasn't even an offer extended to me, and I never went to therapy for it while I lived at home. I found out later, after I moved out, that a different sister of mine had been groomed as well. It started when she was roughly 8 years old and had continued into her teen years. My mother discovered it when I came forward about how he was grooming me. My mother made my sister keep it a secret from me and, thus, made me think it was an isolated incident. 2.5 weeks ago, my youngest sister told me she had been molested by that very same brother. I determined that based on the timeline she gave me, this had been happening around the same time I told our mother he had been grooming me. Which meant that my mother, even after knowing what he had been doing to 2 of her daughters already, did not act to protect my youngest sister from him. Or, rather, she did because she kicked him out after he was found to be trying to peep on her at night. But she never dug deep enough into the situation to realize he had been doing more than peeping during the times she hadn't realized he was doing things. Each of these 3 instances has broke me emotionally. And this last time, it broke me really hard. Because as I drunkenly cried to my college best friend, I had thought the nightmare was finally over, and instead I realized it had never ended. And if left in the hands of my mother, it never would. We'd keep finding out stuff like this, over and over, until someone with moral integrity made it end. The wound would keep opening, for me, each time I thought about how someone else had gone through what I did or worse. And, honestly, I think this 3rd time broke things beyond repair. I reported my brother to CPS, for what he has done, and told everyone who already knew about the situation that I had done so. The result is, pretty much none of my family that I wasn't already estranged from will talk to me. I knew that was going to be the result. It was part of what had kept me from reporting over my own abuse, and yet, this time, I did not care. Because realizing that the nightmare won't end, if it keeps getting swept under the rug, made me realize that I have to make it end regardless of the personal cost to me. Otherwise, we run the risk of children we don't even know having their own personal hell inflicted on them by my brother. In my eyes, we had a moral duty to make sure my brother couldn't hurt anyone else, and I was the only one strong enough to both see and act on it. I don't regret the choice I made. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But, hell, did I have to break to make that choice, and have I broken more since actually doing it? Seeing my mom and dad fight every day, and not divorcing. The most heartbreaking was when I saw my dad crying while my mom was screaming at him during an argument, and I had to intervene and hugged him and got him some water to make him stop crying. Wiping tears off my dad's face broke me that day. And then went to my mom to do the same. That was actually the first time I ever hugged my mom, and my dad. And that was to stop them from arguing while both of them were crying on my shoulder. Sad. During another argument when my mom went to sleep constantly crying, I woke up next day while she was praying loudly, and still crying. And I touched her shoulder and she freaked out. And started acting like a mentally ill patient, screaming and crying and physically pushing us aside as if she was scared of us coming closer to her. I guess either she was exaggerating, she does that a lot, or she was actually deeply traumatized by that particular fight. My life is filled with even more traumatizing events, but these are the most recent ones. I was viciously attacked by a pit bull that ripped half my face apart. While I was in the ER, I called my girlfriend who I loved, and she broke up with me right there over the phone. This led to extreme alcoholism and zero self-confidence as I looked like a monster. It took about 2.5 years to recover from the incident. I still have PTSD if a bigger dog runs up to me without a leash. I have to be on meds to avoid panic attacks if they happen to trigger. Realizing my best friend will never care about me as deeply as I care about them, and I'll never be as important to them as they are to me. Life in general. I've been through so much people don't even believe me anymore. My father abused my mom, and when she ran away, he started beating me. I told the schools when I was 6, and they just turned around and told my dad everything I said. He told them I have a vivid imagination, and then proceeded to chuck me off of the roof of our house when, keep in mind, I was 6 years old. He hit me in the head with a metal bat when I was 9, shot me with a BB gun, tried to stab me, hit me in the head with beer bottles, and coming home from school to see him slouched over with a bottle of pills in his hand thinking he was dead wasn't fun either. Ultimately became homeless at 12 and worked at a McDonald's on night shift when I did school during the day from 12 to 18. Then stayed at McDonald's until the beginning of 2020 when I finally got a tax job. I could never go to homeless shelters because if the cops find you, they just drop you off at the border of another state. I won't say which ones. I've seen it to many people I knew during my time on the street. Now I'm finally away from the worst parts of my life, but the trauma is even worse. I can't sleep. I can barely breathe. I have heart problems and I'm sure I'm just one bad day away from going into a mental breakdown. I've seen murders, assaults, mutilations and everything else. It's shown me the worst parts of humanity and also that the good parts are extremely few and far in between. Being cheated on and lied to by my fiancé. Turned out she'd lied about almost everything for years. Narcissistic personality disorder. Total abuse. Went from engagement to hatred and total trash treatment. Tell people I'm not crap in public and in private, apologizing and saying I didn't deserve any of this. Lost my house, lost my pride, lost a lot of my life. Total shame. Messing around with polyamory in my marriage, which led to a very hard split. I should have checked myself into a hospital during that time. I'm very lucky I didn't permanently end things for myself. Edit. Just throwing this up here because my comment created some discourse regarding whether polyamory works or not. It's not right for me, but it is right for her. I also did not have a healthy view in it and basically just used it for sexual relations with others because I didn't want to build relationships with other people other than my wife. I had great experiences, but when the relationship between me and my wife collapsed, it left me in a place with no support system because my friends were originally her friends. I was questioning my masculinity and sexuality greatly, and I was completely wrecked from the experience. It has taken a lot of work on myself and therapy to be at a place of happiness now. Being unwanted, but I didn't mind that much when I was 18. My trusted friends betrayed me. I was really happy with them, they meant a lot to me, and then it happened. It really messed up my trust for people and my self-esteem. Socializing and making friends became really difficult when I went to college. I became doubtful of people's intentions and withdrawn from people. Years have passed now and I am still getting over it. Nevertheless, my case had improved. Figuring out I'd been molested as a child. I had all the pieces of the puzzle, but hadn't put them together the right way. The day I figured it out, I ended up in a psych ward. It was rough times. But it's been a few years now and I'm doing much better. Medicated, therapized, and still going. Life is good today. I'm starting to feel safe again. Being told that the mass that was picked up during a routine ultrasound for IVF was ovarian cancer and I had been booked for a full hysterectomy. 4 years of trying to have a child, 1 failed round of IVF and now no biological way of having one, plus 6 rounds of chemotherapy. Being the subject of bullying from kids and abuse from teachers at school, then my dad acting like it was my fault. Not getting the proper medical attention I knew I needed, not feeling heard by medical professionals. I had a horrific case of food poisoning, Campylobacter, which is actually fairly common but presented abnormally in me. ER doctors and urgent care kept telling me I was probably just pregnant, which there was no way at that time for that to be possible. Begging for tests to be done but being denied because I was probably pregnant. I couldn't eat or drink anything because I would immediately start cramping and faint. This went on for a week before I found an ER that did a CT scan and tests and discovered the bacteria. I thought I was dying.